Picture this: a prosperous nation, admired for its wealth and power, but plagued by accusations of moral decline. Is that ancient Sodom or modern America? This comparison has stirred up heated debates for centuries, and today we're diving deep into what the Bible really says about it.
That's a question that always grabs people's attention, and not just theologians. I'm excited to unpack how Genesis, Ezekiel, and even modern thinkers approach the Sodom parallel. In this episode, we'll go beyond cliches. First, we'll clarify what Sodom's actual sins were, then look at how those apply to the U.S. Today, explore the biblical response, and finally, discuss what the real lesson is for society at large.
So whether you've heard America called the New Sodom, or you're just curious about the deeper biblical nuances, stick with us. We're digging into the roots of this comparison, challenging assumptions, and exploring what it means for us right now.
Let's start by breaking down the biblical profile of Sodom and why it's often misunderstood.
Most people think of Sodom as a city defined by one notorious act, but if you actually look at the Bible, it's much more layered. Genesis 19 describes violence, but Ezekiel gets even more specific: arrogance, indifference to the poor, and a culture obsessed with its own comfort.
That Ezekiel passage always surprises people. Instead of focusing on individual immorality, he paints Sodom as a society that ignored the needy, flaunted wealth, and grew complacent. It's almost like he's diagnosing the symptoms of a civilization unraveling from the inside.
And the violation of hospitality in Genesis, the threat against visitors, shows how deep the breakdown of social cohesion went. Hospitality was sacred in the ancient world, so these actions meant Sodom wasn't just immoral, it was actively hostile to outsiders.
It's fascinating how the biblical authors layer these critiques. Sodom's downfall wasn't just about a single sin, it was a whole system of arrogance, neglect, and violence. That complexity is often lost in modern debates.
So when people compare America to Sodom, they're usually not just talking about moral issues. They're looking at wealth, apathy, inequality, and injustice. The U.S. is incredibly prosperous, but critics say that prosperity comes with a risk: losing sight of the poor and marginalized.
That accusation isn't new. The Bible's standard for a righteous city was one that actively looked out for widows, orphans, and strangers. When America struggles with systemic injustice, some argue it echoes Ezekiel's warning about arrogance and indifference.
And on top of that, the breakdown in civility, especially in politics, feels eerily familiar. When the social fabric tears and people stop treating each other with dignity, it's easy to see why the Sodom comparison gets traction.
It's almost a mirror held up. Are we just powerful, or are we actually compassionate? That tension isn't just historical, it's shaping conversations about national identity right now.
Funny you say that, because the Bible's response isn't what most expect. In Genesis 18, Abraham doesn't cheer for judgment. He begs God to spare Sodom if there are even a few righteous people left. It's a model of intercession, not condemnation.
That really shifts the frame. Instead of pointing fingers, Abraham advocates for mercy, even in a city known for corruption. It suggests the true biblical posture is to pray, intervene, and hope for redemption, not just sit back and judge.
And it's powerful, because Abraham keeps negotiating down to 10 righteous people. God agrees the city could be spared for their sake. That means a small group can have an outsized impact on a nation's fate.
It's a call to action. Being part of the remnant isn't about escaping blame. It's about actively living out justice and humility, even when the culture feels hostile.
That brings us to the lesson that's almost always overlooked: the danger of hubris. Sodom believed its wealth made it untouchable. But the Bible keeps warning: nations are fragile, and arrogance is the quickest path to collapse.
I think that's the hardest message for modern societies to hear. Prosperity feels permanent, but the Sodom story says it's not. The real safeguard isn't power or money, it's humility, mercy, and justice.
And when a nation stops caring for the vulnerable, or assumes its success is guaranteed, it's walking straight into the biblical trap. That's why the comparison matters. It's a warning, not just a headline.
It's almost like the story asks, will you look inward and change, or keep pointing outward? That's a question every society has to wrestle with.
Let's wrap up with 3 key takeaways. First, Sodom's story is about systemic arrogance and neglect, not just individual behavior. Second, the biblical response is intercession praying and acting for righteousness, not condemning from afar. Third, the ultimate threat to any nation is hubris, believing you're above consequences because of wealth or power.
And here's a practical next step for listeners. Reflect on your own community. Ask where you see neglect of the poor, injustice, or arrogance, and take action, whether that's volunteering, advocating, or simply reaching out to someone in need. That's living out the lesson, not just talking about it.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. The Sodom comparison isn't a political weapon, it's a mirror for us all. If you found this conversation challenging or helpful, share it or keep the dialogue going.
We'll be back with more nuanced episodes. Until then, stay curious, stay compassionate, and remember, change starts with us.